the Linfield History Society clubbed together to buy the match pennant that you can see on the table here, and there's quite a few of the donors are in the room today. And again, personally, from my point of view, it's great to be supported in the way that we were, and it's great to have the pennant back in the club's possession. So thanks to everybody. Stuart's going to have a bit of a chat with Eric and Alan about the City Games, and we'll obviously be taking some photos and capturing the social media activity as well. But it's great to have the two current club ambassadors back with us today. So thanks for coming along and speaking about it. So I'll hand over to Stuart.
Eric, thanks very much for coming today. As captain of the team at the time, over 50 years ago now, how do you feel about the Pennant coming back into the club's ownership?
Well, anything that reminds us of those two games is welcome.
Alan, I'll come to you. You were a young and upcoming fullback at the time. What was it like coming up against the full-time English opposition?
Well, at that time I was 17. First time in an airplane going to Manchester, and I think I was more nervous getting on the airplane than I was going out of the main road. But I just took it all in stride. The guy I was marking was Colin Bett, or Neil Young, who was an English international. And Bingham came to me that morning with the newspaper. He says, "Alan, would you read that?" And I says, "I wasn't going to read this." For this guy, Neil Young, had been stating in the paper that if he didn't score a hat-trick against part-timers, he wasn't up to much. So I sat and read the article, but during the game, I mean, as Eric says, it just passed you by, and we just worked as a team that night, and Bingham was the instigator behind motivating of the team more than anything.
You mentioned there about Main Road. Was it packed Windsor Park that night? Tell us what the preparations were like leading up to the game. Obviously we were 1-0 down from the first leg. Was there much of belief that we could get a result in the second leg?
I think I was working that morning of the match. I served my time in Scots along with the late Billy Neagle, who was in my department of work. And I remember we went to a hotel, I can't remember, the Wellington Park I think we went to, for pre-match meal. And again, it was just up, we took it all in our stride. We had a goal down, of course. We had good players in our team. I mean, really, Milne had come back from Arsenal a few years before that. I mean, he could have been playing in England full time. But when Billy was on his game, he was as good as what it was about. And he was the difference that night in the two teams, really. He just ran at them and they couldn't do anything with them.
I think that most people didn't realise we were supremely fit. We were as fit as they were. I mean, we were as fit as they were because we trained virtually every night for about 2 months or so.
Was that basically all down to Billy then?
He got us to do things. I mean, if you'd have said to me that Phil Scott would have did the runs he did, and at the age he was, I'd laugh at you. But they were all supremely fit, and he just had a great psychology. He made us believe we could do something. But we had a lot of good players too. I mean, McGee or him with Scott. Scotty didn't play in the games, but Milne, Cathcart, Sinclair. I mean, they were all super players and they were super fit. So we weren't such an outside bet as a lot of people might have thought.
Even Sinky had said at that time he had been at Chelsea for 3 or 4 years, and he felt Bingham's trainer was harder than what he was doing full time at Chelsea. You know, in fact, we played Glentoran on a Saturday, and we were training here on the Friday night. He had us in every night that week. So it was just, well, it was to keep Scotty and the boys out of the pub. I don't know, but
Well, Eric, sadly Billy Milne is no longer with us. Did he speak much about scoring the 2 goals at Windsor that night?
No.
And how much do you think it meant to him?
No, he hardly mentioned it. No, Billy was just that sort of character, effervescent, always on the go, always talking, and his greatest disappointment was that he couldn't find any TV coverage of his goals. And I really mean that. He looked everywhere to see if he could find footage of those 2 goals, because he wanted everybody to know about it.
Alan, you mentioned there about Billy and his training. As it was Billy Bingham's he was time at the manager. What was Billy like to play for?
Great motivator. You know, he definitely was way ahead of his time, and that as a coach. I mean, I remember we played Glentoran mainly here. Both teams would have come out, usually the home team first, and both teams never really come out first. Home team would come out first, but I remember one particular game, he wouldn't let us go out, and the referee was banging the door, and he wouldn't let us go out, and then Glentoran went out, and of course we went out after it, and of course the roar of the crowd when we came out, he just felt that was one up on the opposition. Things like that there. Plus his motivating individuals was outstanding. He just had that gift, and it proved it in the Spanish exploits of the Northern Ireland team. How most of those players would have said the same thing. You know, he was just a great motivator.
He treated everybody differently but equal. I mean, he knew who he could really have a go at and who he couldn't. I mean, we always laugh about the time as Big Ed McAllister came here, and I was a 6'3" centre half. But one of his early games, he was having a nightmare. He was missing the headers, or slicing over his head everywhere, and bringing the boys on the bench were telling me, he was saying, "Who ever told that big lad he could play?" And he came in at half time and he said, "Ivan, magnificent." And the rest of us are going. And the big lad went out second half and had a great game just because he knew the right thing to say to him. You know?
Well, thanks very much for both of you for taking time out to join us this afternoon before the game, and it's something that's, I know, for myself and the club, it's very much appreciated.